Hello and welcome to the relaunch of our series of Cyber Houston series. We're thrilled to have you join, and as we kick off this new chapter in December, Cyber Houston is a collaborative initiative dedicated to building a more cyber resilient community here in Houston and beyond. We bring together expert business leaders and the community to share knowledge, best practices, and strategies for protecting organizations and individuals in today's ever evolving cyber landscape. This series will serve you as a go to resource for practical insights into cybersecurity, resilience, and risk management. Whether you're a small business owner or a corporate leader, or simply someone interested in learning how to protect your digital world, we are here for you. And with that, let me welcome my two partners in crime, John Vellante and Supi Perlugi Stella. Hey guys, how are you doing?
Hey, good afternoon, Andy.
Fine.
Good to
Thank
be
you.
with
Good
you.
afternoon.
So I think, John, you're going to introduce to the subject today, right?
Yeah, so this is, as we round out the year, I wanted to talk about something that's really impactful, but very difficult as well. As we talked, the three of us earlier in the day, about some of the difficulties in the whole job of securing ourselves, protect, defend, and really just stopping bad things from happening. And there's a lot of companies that don't have the budgets, the people, the tools, or the run books to bring this cybersecurity together in a holistic way inside of their own institution. But at the same point in time, we recognize that threat actors are everywhere trying to break into different institutions, organizations, et cetera. So we have to protect ourselves, but we don't have the expertise to do it ourselves. We have to go to market and we have to talk to managed security service providers. And we have to trust that they're going to do the right thing. They're going to protect us the way we need to be protected. They're going to be great stewards of our budget and almost spend the money as if though it were our own. I mean, that's really what we want. We want to be able to go to the market and say, well, make us secure and let us know when we are secure. That's what we want. But now we have to evaluate third parties. And how do we pick an MSSP? We might not even know the right questions to ask. So I think that's really a valuable topic for the three of us to dive into today. And I'll open it up to the two of you. You have great depth of expertise in the world of MSSP, contracting, consulting, et cetera. So what are your thoughts on picking the right MSSP?
Pierluigi, why don't you start us with a with example of what you experienced? Because I think that's a great thing that we see so often to explain why we pick this subject.
Yes. So we are trying to do this series talking to small and medium business owners, right? But the idea here is that at some point you are talking to, let me call it an intermediary that is already taking care of your computers, an MSP, for example, right? If you are outsourcing, it's an MSP. If you have in-house, it's your IT people. But at the end of the day, you're talking to somebody that knows IT in general. You are the business owner, and you're asking them, how do I make sure that I'm safe? Right? Rarely, small medium businesses have the budget to hire a CISO. Ideally, you would have to delegate these questions to somebody that is not in IT. That, like I see, many of my clients are larger clients. They have a CISO that reports directly to the board, to the CEO. Doesn't even talk to the CIO anymore, which is fine. I would say finally, it's taken 20 years for that to happen, right? But there is an ideal situation. Now you have an expert in-house that will hopefully spend your money properly, as John said, because it works for you. But if that's not your situation, you can't hire a CISO. Where do you go? How do you know that wherever proposed the solution they give you is going to give you enough protection to give you a decent security posture that your money is well spent and you haven't wasted your money. It is tough because I have been talking to a lot of MSPs this year because our company has been trying to change go-to-market strategy. And I see a tendency, for example, into thinking that cybersecurity is equal MDR, right? And there is a complete dismissal of the problem of protecting the perimeter. There is this idea around that the perimeter is dead, right? The perimeter is different than it was 20 years ago. I'll give you that, but the perimeter is never dead. We can call it edge instead of perimeter, but it's still there somewhat. You still have to protect your users. And to me, that's my two lines before I move on is protecting and preventing is always 99% of the problem. Detecting is always too late. Right? You want to lock the door before you have a camera inside that looks at somebody that got in. So this idea of only looking at the MDR, which is D stands for detection, to me is wrong. It's underestimating the problem. Right? But the MSPs go to the conferences, and all they find is MDR companies that are competing with market buzz and market lingo into portraying themselves as the ultimate solution for the MDR space. Let me call it space, because then you hear XDR and now there's NDR and incident response. And there's a lot of buzzwords that confuse everybody, and the MSPs are going to be as confused as the client, and the client relies the end user client. And relies on the MSP to bring the solution. What I think we need to go in the direction is how do we give these small and medium business owners some tools to ask the right kind of questions to ensure that the MSP actually knows what he's doing at the end of the day, because that's what it comes down to. The MSP needs to be able to truly properly evaluate what is choosing for your cybersecurity. You are delegating the choice to them. Right? Maybe towards the end of your space time, we could discuss diverting the liability with the cyber liability, right? Asking them about cyber insurance and other things of this nature that correlate to who's actually ultimately responsible if something happens, and having proper paperwork in place. But the first here we're trying to talk from a technical standpoint is how do you know that the MSP is actually doing, I don't have another way to say it, knows what he's doing, knows how to properly choose your security solution. Right?
Yeah, and I like to separate the two things, because I think you say something that I really like, and I hope this doesn't get anyone offended, is we see a lot of IT people with really good experience making information security decisions, which sometimes what we don't realize is that, especially the three of us, we spend a lot of hours training in this sector, and we realize that this requires some level of specialization, especially when you are recommending how to develop a program to an organization. So to me, the first question that anyone in the ownership should be looking from the MSP, MSSP is saying, okay, show me your information security expert. Who is the one who is giving me, an advice on this? And then validating credentials. Because again, someone can be with a lot of IT experience, but they sometimes, let's be honest, we have seen this happen very often. IT and information security are different. They have different objectives. And that's why, for example, in information security, we do not recommend an ERP because we don't know how to do it, right? That's not in our business. So I think it's helpful to the first question to be about the skill set of the person who is going to provide advice, or the team who is going to provide advice. The second aspect that to me is a more ethical aspect is if the MSP is only pushing the products that they sold and they bad mouthing everyone else, I don't like that, right? Because there's a lot of very good products in the market, and they're bad products, right? But at the end, there has to be a conversation about how to position security for the organization, not about how much I can sell to you and gain money, right? This is about security controls, not so much about what else can I sell you and make profit. I remember one organization that Luigi and I talk about this, of someone who have a firewall, and then the same firewall was sold to have a VPN service on top of the firewall that the firewall was already offering, right? So sometimes those things are created because there is just a not a very ethical company. So I will pay attention, and I will pass the ball now to maybe John or you. I would say skill set for me is who is providing the advice, and the second one is they they should not be about mouthing other solutions that they don't sell.
Before I let John, one very quick thing. You said about bad products or good products. I wouldn't even go that far. It's the market is very confusing. There are a lot of products selling often niche solutions that are probably needed by some very large corporation that has the specific problem, but they're not where you want to put your money in when you have a basic need. Now you're starting to eat. You're not gonna eat the dessert. You're gonna eat protein and some vegetables, right?
Totally,
So
totally.
there is to be a knowledge there of the distinction so that you can weed through all this enormous buzz in the market to say, do I really need this problem solved right here, this particular little corner, or do I have a much bigger problem? I don't even have a firewall, and or whatever it is that I don't have, right? The market for those who are not in the system, who are not in the in cybersecurity, is enormously confusing because it's a $300 billion market, and everybody wants a piece of it. And somehow every company tries to distinguish themselves with different solutions, always, often, in my opinion, to problems that don't necessarily exist or don't exist for everybody.
Yeah.
Right? And certainly don't apply to small, medium businesses.
Yeah.
Well, it's interesting because the kind of the sarcastic side of me looks at the drug industry and asks myself, is Pfizer really interested in curing things? Are they interested in selling drugs? They want to sell drugs.
Yeah.
And I think about cybersecurity, and are these companies really interested in pure security and actually securing ourselves to where there are no more breaches? Because there's so much revenue that's ginned up through breach response and imperfect security. It makes me wonder if there's a little bit of a parallel there. And Pierluigi, I this time of year, holidays, yeah, we're pretty much going to eat dessert first. I think that's been proven time and time again. But when I think about an MSSP, I would get kind of my list of must-haves versus the next layer down. And so I would really view it as, how do I get some quick kills, meaning get some incompetent vendors off the board as fast as I can. So I'm thinking about things like, what types of compliance requirements does my industry have? And does the vendor have expertise in satisfying those types of compliance requirements? Are they going to make it easier for me to get through an audit, to get through an examination? Do they truly have 24/7/365 monitoring and alerting? Do they have examples of robust playbooks so that when something does happen and they're springing into action, they're doing something that makes sense? I also want to take a look at their website and see if I can make sense as a layman of what I'm buying and what they're going to charge me for it. If you can't figure out what in the world you're buying or what you're paying for it, that's a huge red flag to me. And, one of the things that Pierluigi, you talked about prevention being 99%. There's a really interesting article, a research paper that was co-authored by researchers from Stanford and Carnegie Mellon that talked about the use of the Artemis agentic AI platform, I think framework, to essentially get into a network and start hacking the network. And they put this up against 10 professional human penetration testers, and it beat 9 of the 10 humans. So what does that mean to us? We have to double down on prevention, because if they get in, an unseasoned hacker using great tools will cause more damage. So we could see overall expertise of hacks once an initial beachhead is gained, it could lift. And if your threat model and don't, maybe threat model is the wrong phrase. We all know bad things potentially are going to happen to us. So we ask ourselves, well, what is the bad thing I'm afraid of? And if it did happen, how bad is it going to be? Well, are you afraid of unskilled kids in the basement of their mom's house? Or is it organized crime? Or is it a nation state of highly skilled, right, advanced APTs, the advanced persistent threat? What are you really afraid of? And you have to tune and calibrate your defensive posture against those most likely threats. But again, prevention, I think we have to double down on because of what we're going to see in post-exploitation capabilities. And one last thing. So you get your short list, start clearing people off the table. And some additional, you got to pick your red flags too. If you feel like you're being rushed and pushed into a multi-year contract, that's not a great place to be. And you're certainly going to want to shy away from any type of a vendor that is going to guarantee 100% security, or let's say they've got proprietary algorithms that they're going to use to protect you. In the world of crypto, proprietary means run away because crypto we use well-known published algorithms that have been tested for a significant period of time. Andy, you made a great point. Resumes. A lot of people hire companies based on the logo, right? The old saying, no one ever got fired for buying IBM. No one ever got fired for buying Cisco. You're buying a logo, you're buying a brand. But when we come into the world of MSSP, that brand doesn't deliver the work. It's the human that delivers the work. I always favor the resume over the logo. That's really where the rubber meets the road. And then the last thing I wanted to mention, there could be some folks who confuse a fractional CISO or a virtual CISO with a managed security service provider. And I would look at a vCISO as someone that comes in and says, here's what you need to do. Here's why you need to do it. Here's how you track it. Here's how we're going to report against it. Here's how we're going to measure risk and report to the board and to management on risk. You're really going to be leveraging an MSSP to do the hard work of your security operations center. And you maybe lean on your vCISO to do policy work, programmatic work, but there's a clear distinction in security between security operations and the governance and oversight of the overall program.
Yeah, GRC and ops, somehow the requirements for the skill set of those people are going to be substantially different. And going back to what other questions I will ask, I will say, for example, if you already know, for example, the skill set you ask about, solutions that they may use, and I like what Pierluigi said about the definitions, because I think there's too much marketing and then the definitions get watered down. But the last thing is about, okay, tell me how you will do it, for an organization of my size, because the MSP business is about oversubscription, right? They will try to sell you whatever there is in the portfolio and then apply that cookie cutter to every organization. And sometimes the conversation about, okay, how you are going to help me to reduce my risk is based on some type of framework. And here is something that I feel very passionate, and John knows about this, is if you use like CIS controls or some type of framework that is a realistic way, that is proved, that is not, again, this is not the MSP telling you, the products that they tell you, but somehow how those controls can be applied based on the stack that they may have on the security. I think that's valuable when, they start talking to you from a third party, reference, and not so much about, oh, this is kind of my package, my stack, and we just have to do everything. And the last part that I would say, and then Pierluigi, I would love to hear from you, is we have to be very, very careful about the change management aspects of these implementations. If someone comes to you and tells you you don't have anything and suddenly you need everything, you're going to fail. Security cannot be implemented in that way. You have to have a partner next to you that have a program with maturity increase in place that it will make sense. You cannot come across the board and try to do everything in 2 months. You have to have a somehow plan, somehow a program that will show that progress and that maturity level increasing as the time goes. And if you have 5 products that you try to sell to everyone all the time, then those 5 products, they just don't increase in maturity. Pierluigi, what do you think?
I think we need to distinguish a little bit between products and services, because cybersecurity is not a product, right?
Yep.
And starting from the assumption, I try to start from the assumption that at least in certain areas of cybersecurity, most products today are equivalent. Right? We can have conversations later offline about the different merits of different vendors of the various firewalls, but firewalls have been around for 20 years. Right? A firewall that is properly configured, even the little router in my home has IP tables in it and can block you from coming in. Okay? The real problem is the people behind it. I have seen a lot of times very poor security postures caused not by the product, but by the people that had configured the product. Zero rules, no rules, right? Everything open. Zero trust was invented, was talked about for the first time by a PhD student in Sweden in 1999. This is 26 years later, and there are still people that open up everything in their firewall. And this is just an example, right? Incorrect and unskilled configurations can destroy every conversations about strategies, compliance, frameworks, and anything else you want. Because you may look on paper as though you have a perfectly set cybersecurity, and then somebody who doesn't know what they're doing, they can destroy you. You can be a general, but if your troops can shoot, you will never win the war, right? And I know John's laughing because, but it's the reality of it. Somebody is gonna have to know how to do the work. People need to understand that at the end of the day, cybersecurity is especially about being able to do the work correctly. Yeah. Because if I have to talk, I talked to a CISO who asked me if he should do DNSSEC or DNS over HTTPS. So I had to launch myself into a 15-minute conversation to explain the difference, that the two have nothing to do with each other, and he probably should be doing both. Right. And why? Why do I have to explain that to a CISO? And here we're at the CISO level, right? And then when you go down to the low level, we started from how do I evaluate what to buy? Maybe the first thing you need to buy is hire somebody that is actually trained in cybersecurity, that understands the consequences of the configurations he puts in, that understands the concept of change management, doesn't go around opening ports randomly and forgetting them because it's convenient, and configures the cybersecurity to be annoying. Security has to be annoying. If you're not being annoyed by cybersecurity, you're not doing cybersecurity. If I walk into your office, connect my phone or my computer, and I'm out doing what I want, you have very poor cybersecurity. Period. Right? I need to be walking into your office and nothing that I want to do is working. Now we're talking. I am very drastic from this point of view, because most of the problems that we see have nothing to do with frameworks and compliance and whatever else big word you want to use. They have to do with somebody forgot the back door open. And unfortunately, you end up spending a lot of money, and then you get attacked, because hackers have all the time in the world. There's one thing they have in their advantage, is they have all the time in the world. You leave a door open, they'll find it. Yeah. And it won't even take that long, by the way, because today with the computers that we have, we can scan the entire internet multiple times over in one day. Okay, so it's not that difficult.
It's interesting because you talk about zero trust, and selecting an MSSP is almost the exact opposite, insofar as we need a lot of trust. Yeah. We're trusting our crown jewels with these companies. And one thing that we haven't talked about that's really powerful is word of mouth and references. Now, if you ask a company for references, they're not going to give you any bad references. So hopefully the reference calls that you can get on, you can ask some open-ended questions to really get the other side to start talking, to reveal some of the things. What was difficult about the implementation? Were there any blind spots that showed themselves afterwards that surprised you? Did you end up buying what you thought, what you were sold, right? Because sometimes we don't buy what we're sold. We get something totally different. So word of mouth is huge. I would say don't rush it either. You can't rush this decision. I onboarded an MSSP in the early part of 2025. I had been talking to 3 companies for about 2 years. I knew well in advance that I was going to kind of increase my bench strength using a strategy that didn't include additional employees. So I made sure to go to the marketplace. I immediately find a bunch of people that look the same. And the minute I find a bunch of vendors that kind of look the same, I'm pretty much not going to talk to them anymore. I want to find people who are doing something new. They're doing something different than just lather, rinse, repeat of some of the bigger firms that live on volume. And 2 years is a long time, but you're putting a lot of eggs in those baskets. And I certainly, a lot of times when you're asking these questions, you may not know the exact technical details that you're being told, but common sense says, do they sound like they have their act together? And you want to hear somebody that makes sense who's not in sales. You don't want to hear this from a salesman. Salesmen get paid to make sense, but they, and I don't mean to disparage them, they have a critical role in that sales cycle. But when you're buying something, you need to talk to a person who technically knows how it works, what it protects you against, and what its limitations are. And if you ask those types of questions and you understand, what do you do for me at the edge? What do you do for me in the cloud? What do you do for me inside the guts of my own network? What do you do for me on the end point? You want to hear a lot of answers that mesh together. They're not forced, they're not clunky, and it feels as if though they have their act together. And then you just keep, digging deeper. I know we have probably just like 2.5 minutes left. Any parting words, Andres or Pierluigi, from you?
I think we're giving more work to business owners, and probably they're very unhappy with us about that. But I think what you just said is very important, right? Make your due diligence list of things that you have to evaluate, and make sure to follow these. This cannot be a simple relationship buy-in because you like the salesperson. You have to go deeper. That would be my advice.
My last one, since we need to close, would be, if your MSP doesn't have specifically an MSSP side with really qualified people, consider getting cybersecurity somewhere else. Because, by the way, in my opinion, there is a conflict of interest in the MSP doing also the cybersecurity.
Mm-hmm.
If they are a large enough brand where they can have basically a separate company, but these two are not talking to each other, and the cybersecurity guys are really keeping your interest in mind and nothing else, then fine, same company. But if the company MSP is small and the guy that's doing your network is also doing your firewall and your cybersecurity, run. Get cybersecurity somewhere else. Put them to monitor what the MSP is doing. Because this separation of duties and separations of responsibilities will certainly improve your posture. Because nobody's going to open up random ports in your firewall just because the MSP needs to do something and then forget it, and then tomorrow you get attacked. Okay? Because a lot of this stuff, unfortunately, in 2025, a lot of these things still happen, and it's really disheartening. This is stuff we should have been saying in 1999, not in 2025.
Yep.
Okay. I think we are done for the day, and I hope it was useful. Maybe we put more questions on the table than any answer we've given, but that's our role, right? We raise questions so that our listeners hopefully will have something to think about and reach their own conclusions based on their needs, their requirements, and their budget, because that's the one thing that we don't know is their budget, right? Cybersecurity seems to cost always a little more than what our users and listeners would like, but it is the unfortunate reality of cybersecurity. It is necessary. It's a necessary evil, and we can discuss the merits of spending more in another session. For now, be sure to follow us on LinkedIn, YouTube, and cyberhouston.org to stay up to date for the latest episodes and resources. Thank you for joining us today for this new episode of the Cyber Houston series. Together, we can build a stronger, more resilient Houston, a cyber resilient Houston, I should say. We will see you in 2026. Happy New Year to everybody. Thank you.